talk about sustainability. The objectives of our class today are to describe the laws of supply and demand and how they relate to the food problem, to distinguish plain land from arable land, and to draw conclusions about what is needed for a sustainable future to ensure that there is enough food, fiber, and fuel for everyone. We will also talk about and determine potential solutions to the food problem. Sustainability. What is that? Any ideas?
How much the land can handle.
Okay, how much the land can handle? What did you say, Katie?
I don't know, something in the future.
Something in the future. Okay. All of these are really good. So sustainability is going to emphasize the ability for us to continue indefinitely, forever basically, into the future. Sustainability is site-specific. So what is sustainable in one part of the world is going to look different from another part of the world. So what might be sustainable here in New York might be different than what's sustainable in California, or what's sustainable in the United States may be much different than it is in Europe or Asia. Agriculture is the most helpful, most useful, and most noble employment of man. George Washington. So now we know what sustainability is. What is sustainable agriculture?
How do you do it?
Okay, it has to do with farming, it has to do with the future, and making sure that we can farm in the future. So, it is the kind of agriculture that will not hinder its own future. So it's the kind of agriculture that allows for there to be a future and continue on. So, Colton, do you do things on the farm that help and are going to help you have agriculture into the future?
Yeah, like crop rotations and stuff.
Crop rotation, absolutely. Crystal, do you do anything? Crop rotation, maybe conservation, tillage. Awesome, all of those are great. So, will there be enough land for us to have agriculture in the future? Let's talk about now. Do we have enough land to provide food, fiber, and fuel? Yes, absolutely. But do you think there will be enough in the future?
No.
No? No? Okay. Well, that may not be a question we can answer right now, but it may certainly be possible through sustainability. So, is there enough land? About 50% of the land in the world is not usable. It's either in the polar ice caps, it's part of the tundra where there's permafrost, you can't grow crops there, high mountain ranges making it very difficult, desert areas, you can certainly do irrigation, things like that, but it's very costly and very inefficient. 30% of our land is in permanent grasslands or forests, used for grazing, like our picture suggests here. So, what about that other 22%? Well, that's what we call arable land. Okay? And arable land is land that can be cultivated for agricultural use to provide us with our food, our fiber, our fuel. So let's look at where the arable land is. Okay? So here's the country and percent of good or arable land for agriculture. On the other side, I'm going to bring up some numbers, and those are the actual amount of land they have in production. So Africa has 6%, Asia, North and Central has 10%, so essentially all of their arable land in production. India, they have 24% of their land in production, well, 20% of it is arable. How does that work?
They didn't even care for none.
Okay, so they're using land that we wouldn't consider usable, arable land. They're going to use marginal lands for agriculture. Very good, Coleman. We're actually going to look at a picture of terracing and what that is in the future. So you can see in South Asia, Vietnam, they actually have more land in production. Europe at 31%, North and Central America at 13, Oceania 6, and South America at 7. So let's talk about what we grow on these arable lands. What do you guys think the 3 most important crops in the world are? Wheat,
Corn.
corn,
Rice.
rice. Absolutely, corn, wheat, and rice. And these crops all have some things in common. 1, they're all grasses. 2, they're grown for their seed. Okay? We eat that, we feed that to our livestock. They're high in energy, high in carbohydrates. That provides us with the fuel and you can keep going each day. And they're widely adaptable. Okay? Corn is grown in all 50 states in the United States. So it obviously can live in a variety of different climates. However, we know we have problems with food around the world. There is enough food to feed everyone. The problem is availability, supply. How do we get it to these places? So who's ever heard of the law of supply and demand? Yeah, you have, Ashley? Can you kind of explain what that means?
Demand everywhere.
Okay, so there's demand everywhere, the supply is giving it. So maybe we have a supply, maybe we don't, and that's going to influence price. So, supply is the food production per acre of land times the yield, how much we get off of that. So that's how much supply we have. The demand is the food used per person times the total number of persons. So how many people need that food? Okay? Also known as our population. From the graph you can see here, when demand is high, but supply is low, the price is going to go up. When supply is high, but the demand is low, the price is going to go down. So depending on how much supply and how much demand determines the price of our food. So there are 4 dimensions to the food problem. Okay? The dimensions are crop yield, land available, we talked about that a little bit, food use per person, and human population. Do you guys have a solution for any of these demands? What would a potential solution to one of these demands be? Increase crop production, absolutely. Increase our crop yield, increase our output. What about for land available?
Bring more land into production.
Bring more land into production, certainly, Colton. What about food use per person?
Eat less or more efficiently.
Okay, so you can eat less, eat more efficiently, not as much waste. And our human population, we could stabilize or reduce the human population. Now, Colton, you're making a face at me when I said reduce the human population. We kind of mean that through natural causes, kind of a deal. Plagues, outbreaks, things like that reduced our population a long time ago, but today we have vaccines, we have things. That's why we have such a large population. That's why we have this food problem. So we need sustainable solutions to the food problem. When we think of sustainable solutions, we need to consider the impact on the environment, the impact on the economy and society, and is it ethical? So, what options do we have? think are some options? What are some sustainable options to our food problem? Okay, so decreasing population, absolutely. So we could either reduce the demand or increase the supply. Reduce demand, use contraception, that decreases our population. Reduce consumption, less waste, use less animal products because plant products are more efficient. Decrease in population, that could be a result of starvation, famine, epidemic, like we talked about earlier. Emigration, what's that? Absolutely, when you move out of a place, okay? Or we can increase our supply. We could increase yield, use fertilizers, pest management, multiple practices, irrigation, tillage practices, or increase land. That would lead to deforestation, maybe terracing, which we talked about earlier. Or we could simply eat more stuff. There's plenty of stuff out there that's edible, but we don't necessarily consider it as a food source. Well, and there's your picture of terracing, like we talked about, putting more land into production. So past solutions to the food problem. Okay? Our first food problem was with hunters and gatherers. They didn't have a steady source, they worked the whole time. So they created agriculture. Plants were there, animals were there, they didn't have to be hunters and gatherers. We were able to irrigate our crops so they could be grown in different areas, like along the Nile River. We had increased cropping. We used slash and burn agriculture, multiple croppings. You guys have probably done a little bit of this in history with Miss Colby. The Industrial Revolution, you guys have talked about that. Bigger machines, better innovations, tractors. The application of science to agriculture, scientific breeding, genetics. The Chemical Revolution, the use of fertilizer. You guys might have heard of DDT. That was a good thing for a while to control the mosquito population, but we found out that was not sustainable because it was impacting the eggshells of our birds of prey and decreasing their population, which then in turn is going to affect your food. Okay? The Green Revolution. And tomorrow, you guys, we're going to talk about the Green Revolution. What is it? How did it impact agriculture? Biotechnology and genomics, something we're studying more and more. However, people do have concerns with new technology. They raise moral questions. Is this ethically right? Are we playing God? The consequences are hard to see. Like DDT, it sounded great at the time, but years later we realized the impact it was having, and the negative impact. The more we know, the less likely we are able to make mistakes of ignorance. Okay? This is why we need testing, we need researchers, we need you guys to be in those careers in order for us to have a sustainable future, to make sustainable decisions for ourselves. We need to ask ourselves, what can be done? What should be done? Who decides? Who should pay? And what will the impact be? These are all things we need to consider when talking about sustainability and making decisions that will impact my future, your future, your children's future. So things that are sustainable. Things that are sustainable do not cause air pollution. They do not cause climate change. They do not pollute the water. They do not cause soil erosion. They do not cause the extinction of species. They do not waste. They do not use inefficiently. Okay? We don't want anything that's going to hurt us, going to hinder our future, like we said in that definition. So, taking the information you know now, what things do you think we need for a sustainable future?
Research.
Absolutely. We need researchers. We need people to go into those careers. Okay? We need new approaches to education. We need urban agriculture. You guys are exposed to agriculture every day living in a rural community. We need people in the city to understand where their food comes from, to understand that it's feasible, maybe rooftop garden projects. We need wise users. We need agriculture in the classroom. Not just my class, but in every class, to teach students, to teach the pre-Kers, everyone about where their food comes from. We need leadership. We need people to decide, what do we need to do now to have a sustainable future? What do we do long-term to ensure that we have a sustainable future for our kids? And Colton, here's your point, new knowledge. We need science and research. Think about how far agriculture has come over the past few centuries. Think about how much further we could go with that. So, who can provide me with the definition of sustainability again, in your own words is fine. Well,
It's our ability to continue into the future.
okay? The ability to continue into the future without hindering it,
Yeah.
okay? Just to continue on indefinitely forever, okay? So tomorrow, we're gonna look at the Green Revolution and how Norman Borlaug had this idea to solve the food problem. What could we do? We're gonna look at his impact and the effects. We're gonna talk about, were they sustainable? Were they not? What impact does it have on us today in agriculture?